Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Marketing Hops, where we share pints and perspectives on the B2B sales and marketing ecosystem, and everything that's going on in the landscape. I am super excited to have Gabe on today. Gabe has an incredible background. I know I've known him for a little while now and learned a lot in my time, and I hope you all have a chance to learn from him as well in the course of his career there. But with that, first off, welcome, Gabe. And we always start with the cheers, but what are you sipping on today?
I got something special. It's a work day, so I've been loving these buy or bay drinks. It's got a little coconut pineapple. I've got it in my Yeti mug, and so that's my drink of choice here.
I like it. Well, it is a work day, but hey, still sticking with it. I got Drew Brews. This is a little local microbrewery up here in the mountains, but this one's called the Pacific Crest Pale for those big trail fans. If you've ever heard the PCT, it's like a 2,000 plus mile trek from Canada all the way down to Mexico that a ton of people do, and it goes right by this brewery. So I figured
Wow.
I'd pay a little local homage as we go through that.
Wow, man, you're the real deal. You don't mess around. You don't mess
So,
around.
no, these guys, you got to support local as we go through that.
You have to. You have to.
But well, cheers, and we'll dive in. So
Cheers! It is. Cheers! It is.
So I've gotten to know you over the last couple years, and you have such an interesting background. I would love just give us a bit of, your career journey. Like, you started as an inside
Yeah.
sales rep, and you've made it to CMO, and you've been through some really crazy scaling and acquisitions and all kinds of stuff. Like, walk us through that journey.
Oh man! All right. Well, I was born 9 pounds 8 ounces. Maybe that's too far back.
A little too much on the life story there.
No, I mean, no, it's funny, I don't have one of those, standard SaaS backgrounds, right? I started as actually a BDR, an inside sales rep, way back when, a little company called Sales Team Automation. Most people won't know that. It was a fairly small company. And then I thought, you know what, this isn't for me. So I tried to jump around a little bit. I moved to San Francisco. I did some consulting with Accenture. I moved to New York, did some banking with Goldman Sachs. I was an analyst there for a couple of years. And I had an interesting experience at Goldman Sachs where it was 2007 to 2009. The market, if you remember that world, the market crashed. And I thought, what the hell am I doing in banking? I don't want to do this. And randomly, I took a job overseas. I moved to the Middle East. I spent 5 years working with Toyota out of Saudi Arabia and Dubai, trying to help them transform their customer experience, and fell in love with Dubai. And I thought I was going to be international forever. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting in Dubai. We get a phone call from the government in Abu Dhabi. I don't know if they're going to come after me for this, but they basically said they thought we were spying on them. And so they revoked our business license. Such a weird story. And they revoked our business. They said I had to get out of Dubai. I had nowhere to go. And so I went back to Salt Lake City, Utah. I flew from Dubai to Salt Lake City. And I met up with an old friend from college that I'd known, the founder of a company called Inside Sales. And he said, you got to get out of this technology, out of this consulting hocus pocus, and get into tech. And he had a little company called InsideSales.com. What were they? Maybe 5 million, under 100 employees at the time. And I made the jump, but kind of back into tech. It'd been 10 years outside of it. Long story short, I jump in. We had an awesome run at Inside Sales, 5 to 100. But at 100 million, we did, man. We hit the block. We hit the wall. That might be story that we maybe should be talking about that. But a lot of interesting lessons about scaling a unicorn, but also screwing a unicorn. I'm pretty good at that as well, because we started to go a little bit backwards. And so I did. I took off from inside sales, and then I joined a company called Customer. I'm probably going too deep into the gem, but Customer was awesome. Moved back to New York, and it was another thing. When did I join there? Maybe about the same, maybe around 100 employees, and we had a great run. And 2 years into it, we got bought by Meta for a little over $1 billion. Hey, one of those fun experiences. 2 years at Meta, approximately, doing who knows what. So sometimes when you get these acquisitions, they're a little funky. Love my time there. And then truthfully, some people may not know, but just last summer, Meta came to us and said, we love you guys, love our vision, but there's some interesting things going on here. We need to spin you out. So they did. They spun us out, and we are now kind of a fully, we're on our own as customer 2.0, seeing if we can transform the customer service space with some cool AI. And I'm running marketing, man. So there you go. That's 25 years in 2 minutes.
It's all over. I want to dive into. There's definitely some good stories in here. Let's start with the what not to do when scaling to 100 million, and what were the bumps you can talk about, or the things that really got in the way of that? Because I feel like if you're not earning, you should be learning, and it sounds like you've had a lot of those experiences on the learning side, and then we'll shift to the earning side there too. But what were the biggest gotchas, things that just went royally sideways that people could learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a couple of those learnings, and this one we could go for a long time, but one was, I believe there's something, and maybe I'm too strong here, but I'm going to say it anyways. I think great companies need to get to 100 million on one product. That might be a little bit controversial, but one of the things we tried to do is, I think we maybe had seven products at, that 50, 75 million. And it just became, there was just so many opportunities. I mean, we're talking 2010 to 15. And so think about sales automation at that time. Zoom Info was nobody. DocuSign was barely, I think, doing some of their stuff. There was so many cool sales tech that I think we caught we were like, oh, it'd be fun to do this. And we got a little bit out of a whack on that one. So I think that was one where it was like, man, you've got to understand your core. And if you can build on that, boy, that makes a huge difference. That'd be my first one.
So focus and not trying to do too much all at once, because there's a lot of shiny objects and they might be worth chasing. But if you lose that focus, probably hard to do anything well.
Yeah. So that's one. And man, I've got 10 of them. Let me see if I can get through a couple of them. When you screw a unicorn, you got to actually take some notes, right? I mean, I say screw, again, we started going down from 100 million. I ended up jumping ship, but there's some good things, and there's a lot of good people there. You gotta be nice, right? Anyways, number 2, this was an interesting one. I do believe that if you're going to get to 100 million, you have to be operating in the 3 core segments of like SMB, mid, and enterprise. Don't get me wrong. I know there's exceptions to that, but one of the things we did at one point is we said no to SMB. We said no. We said, you know what? We're too good. If you don't want to spend X dollars with us, we won't work with you. And I actually had one person, I ran into him at an event, and they said, Gabe, I would have never invested in one of your competitors if I didn't know that line was true. And one of those competitors ended up kind of upending InsideSales.com. They took out the SME, then they worked their way into mid-market, and they kind of disrupted us. But I think you got to be very careful. And there's different times and different places, right? But I'm saying if you're really a $100 million company and you're really saying no to business, I don't know. I think you got to be careful of that one. So that might be controversial. That'd be my number 2. That'd be number 2.
Is there a way in that one that you could not say maybe no direct, but and I'd be curious your thoughts on this, because what if you were to route stuff that's not a good fit to a channel partner or something like that? Like, is that still, you're addressing it, but not necessarily in a direct way? Like, is that acceptable, or do you really need those 3 motions?
Look, I think you have to find a way to manage around that. Because if you don't, I just think you got to be very open to disruption, because once you literally say, don't work with us, go work with a competitor, and you don't think that competitor is going to start to eat into margins into other segments, you're stupid. So that's a point I usually like to land. Now, how do you solve that? That's why they pay you the big bucks. I love your channel approach. They could have another, like a reseller type motion. You could. maybe there's a time in a season, right? Like, look, a lot of businesses start SMB. Like, I don't think when you're 5 million, you should have all segments. You
Yeah.
know, like inside sales, we grew up on SMB. I'm saying at 50 million, we made a decision to shut that down.
Yeah.
You shut it down is a strong word, but really say no. And that's where I'm like, look, I think you've got to find a way to make those three work. The solution I leave to you to come up and be creative. So
I like that. What's number 3? We probably won't get through all 10, but the top 3 for sure on it.
okay, number 3, you know, number 3 is, and I got to be careful on this because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I know this is like CNN, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of people viewing this, but you got to hire the right people for the right stage, you know. One of the things we did, and I think there's pros and cons to it, but at a certain stage, we went after the biggest and baddest leaders we could go and find. And I think there's something about if you're at 25 million and you hire your head of, you know, product, and they're from a $10 billion company, there might be there's going to be a challenge there. I typically advise companies and I say, look, I think you want to optimize for 1 or 2 stages ahead of you. So if you're at 25 million, finding someone who's scaled to 100 million is awesome. But if they're really the president at IBM, that might be a bad thing. So, and I'm being a little sarcastic, but finding the right leader for the right stage. Sometimes I feel like people, they see a big name and it's like, man, this guy or this woman is at 10 billion and we're at 10 million, but we can get them. And oftentimes there's a mismatch. And I think we experience that in different ways. Trying to find the right leader at the right stage was difficult.
So let's flip to the other side here. And those are things, lessons learned, what not to do. What are like top 3 that worked really well that are now part of your standard playbook?
Yeah. That is fun, Jeff, because it's, and maybe it's a little cliche, but you know, I need maybe a better statement, but you know, I had a unicorn that was worth 1.5 billion, and we ended up kind of hitting a wall, like I said, at Inside Sales, and really going back. We had a unicorn at customer and ended up selling for, you know, over $1 billion. It's so fascinating to see kind of the differences of how that works, and I'm gonna probably dive even deeper into that. But anyways, some of the things that I saw winning, you know, one of them is, and you and I have chatted about this, is taking, you know, we never were able to be like I'm going to use the HubSpot, like this crazy inbound model where people were, you know, just banging down our door. I remember I went and visited HubSpot, and that inbound machine, even 10 years ago, was just, I was like, you guys are
crazy,
man. It's awesome. Anyway, so having an outbound model that helps you target and identify the people you want. I hate the word ABM. You know, you and I have chatted about this, and so I usually try not to use that word. But having kind of a true targeted based approach that helps you get in with the right people at the right time, I think was a huge difference maker at customer, and it's something I'd be happy to go into at a high level. So that'd be probably one that I'd throw out there. If you want to, I can jump to number 2. The number one I was just saying was more of that outbound model, that outbound approach.
And so what would be your second one there, in terms of kind of nailing that outbound model, kind of right people, right time? What else is in the playbook?
Yeah, I think the second big thing is this push and initiative on the brand side of the house. You know, it's like, you know, or a community-based concept there. I know there's some talk and there's some conversations that, you know, brand is sometimes a bad word, but I think there's some companies who've done some amazing things by saying, hey, it isn't just people following companies, they follow people. And so we really had our good run at customer pre-Meta. We were associated with our audience, man. Our community knew us. The D2C e-commerce brands, like we were with them and they were with us. And there was this concept of, you know, a rising tide floats all boats. Like we gave them great stuff. They gave us back great stuff. And it wasn't We weren't doing demand marketing principles. We were doing thought leadership. We were doing, industry events together. We were doing just more stuff that I felt like were on the brand side of the house, and a community-based approach. Connecting that audience was huge.
So how did you get your other executives to buy in to the brand component? Because that's the thing we hear a lot. And I've talked with a lot of different marketers, and the stats are always ranging for how much is in market. It's like, well, there's only 5% in market. So there's 95% that are in your total addressable market that aren't ready to buy. And that's where you point brand. That's where brand matters, et cetera. But we have been almost over-indexed into this demand gen world as marketers. How did you get the rest of your execs to actually want to fund that, to be okay with things that may not have a provable ROI line item?
That is, I don't know if that's ever an easy answer, because brand is just a word that I try not to use the word brand, because I don't think people, it's just too cliche. It has a bad connotation.
It's picking colors and telling stories.
It really is. And I could give you multiple funny stories where that word slipped out, or truthfully, where I've talked to vendors or partners I've worked with, and I've said, hey, we're going to go into a meeting, and you're going to present to this person or that person, and I want you to talk about this as a website project. This is not a brand project. There's coaching that has to happen. But so look, I would just say I'm not perfect at it. I think that's always a challenge. But one of the things I got to give it to our founders is, and you have that advantage, I think, when you're doing a startup often, is they were smart enough to see that the initial audience that really digested our product best was this certain group of people, like a direct-to-consumer audience, a B2C audience. And rather than trying, and we talked about focus in kind of my how to screw a unicorn conversation, but rather than trying to say, we're going to try to build a product for, and beat Zendesk, that's one of the big Goliaths in our space, and be a B2B SaaS, and be construction, and be direct-to-consumer. I mean, Zendesk supports everybody. Yeah. We said, you know what? We're going to try to win mostly in this one area. And we were able to, when the product let out on the community and said, we're going to start building more of that, product was already bought in. And therefore, marketing could almost jump around them. And we were able to almost jump off their coattails. Had it been otherwise, like I had to convince the audience, I don't know if I would have done it. I'm not that good. Oh.
That's a fair point, though. Like, the bringing the community along with it, they kind of naturally start to lean in, and that makes it a lot easier.
But there was something on that, and that started to help us win on that. Like, we had a couple campaigns that, and there is some saying out there. It's like the battle at home is just as important as the battle abroad. I'm probably slaughtering it, but you go out, we're trying to win in these different markets, and we're trying to beat some of our competitors. And some of these campaigns we did, I thought made such a difference when we celebrated it so much internally. Like, we had this really fun one, just happens to be March, so it was on my mind. We did this one called Make the Switch, and it was a March Madness campaign, and it was during March, It's a little a little bit. Actually, I'll never forget when we rolled it out. I remember our lawyer came to me and was like, I don't think you can use the image and likeness of March Madness. You're going to get us in trouble. I think the NCAA did actually contact us. But my point was, we had this really fun thing, and it took our competitors, and we had these different webinars where we had customers who had left one of our competitors, and we pushed it out to our audience, and we put us against the competitor and worked through this March Madness landscape. And I'll tell you what, though, internally, people had as much fun with it as they did externally. And I just felt like doing campaigns that don't just hit your target audience, but, regenerate some of those internal excitements. I felt like that kept people going on, like, yeah, this is awesome. We're having this cool campaign for our community, and they're kind of seeing the goods and the bads of our competitors. And things like that help kind of solidify the base.
It's kind of interesting, and I think you probably get a little bit more grace as a startup in some of those areas. Like I have a friend who, not quite as in your face, but kind of, well, maybe more. They actually did like the Salesforce no symbol. We'll
Yeah.
put it on their competitor in urinal cakes, and at conferences, and we'll go and put them in like the men's urinals, and you can do stuff that gets in people's face, and people kind of have fun internally as you go through that. But then there's also, as you get bigger, probably that line you need to walk.
It always is.
I have another friend who similar probably dear. I'd be curious if you got the phone call from the lawyer. She did a thing with F1 and got a cease and desist letter because they were utilizing that brand almost too much. It's kind of like, hey, if you're a startup, ask forgiveness.
That's it, right? I think, and that's something I've been seeing the debate on LinkedIn a little bit. I'm a big believer in, if you're the David and Goliath, if you've got the David and Goliath, as a startup, you have to use that. And so you have to go after, and if you don't get a cease and desist, I think you're not doing it right. I think you have got to go after. When we were at Inside Sales, we kind of had this field sales, inside sales versus field sales. You need this common enemy concept. And so I think shame on you if you're not doing it as a startup. The question is, there gets this place, right? Like once you hit 50 million, you're 100 million.
Right.
And if you ever dip down and you entertain, you start competing against the 5 million, then, like we had this moment not too long ago where Zendesk finally put up a competitive page against customer, and we like had a celebration about
so that's
it.
a win.
That's and I would advise them, like, we're a drop in the bucket compared to Zendesk. So I wouldn't even waste the time if I'm them, because that's big going to small, But man, when you're small going to big, shame on you if you're not getting those seasons.
So challenge accepted for people here is push your marketing to the bounds of getting a cease and desist.
You got to, or at least push if you can't find a common enemy, a David and Goliath story, a big competitor, and sometimes that's just about getting your messaging, but that helps you get on the map, So I'm a big believer in that.
No, I think that's a fun one. I'll be curious if anybody does do anything and gets a cease and desist. I'd be curious to hear.
Oh yeah. The advice on this show is not, I don't support it. I don't say you should do it. I'm not any lawyer in that front.
Yeah, this is not legal advice.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
All right, so we got two there. What's a third, like, kind of one just big lesson learned on things to do as you're scaling? Like, what's one more critical thing that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that one of the biggest challenges that companies have, I've been calling it sea of sameness. This is hard to just, I want to give you maybe two more, but I'm going to go with this one. There's so much sea of sameness. And when you look at a space like us, like customer service, I'll tell you what, it's, there's 1,000 companies like us, and we're all saying the same thing. Make your customers happier. Use chat bots, use AI, blah, 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 blah. It's like, how do you make it different? And it's maybe ties a little bit to what we were saying about finding that common enemy, or there's got to be something in your messaging, and it's going to be hard. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but it's something that you've got to be able to find, because if not, I promise you, it will just be blah, and the thing that really resonated with our audience was we had this kind of big messaging exercise where we came across something where we said, customer service starts at hello, not help. Customer service, it's kind of like the why of customer. And I won't bore you. If anybody wants to see the deck or see me present it, I promise I'll bring you to tears. It's such a good messaging. Little pat on the back. It's such a good messaging deck. But no, in all seriousness, when prospects hear it, they do say that's different. That is like that you're not just saying AI, chatbot, something else. You're saying we look at customer service differently. When the order is created, that's when customer grabs the actual customer entity and 1,000 other data points And that fundamentally changes the customer experience. What Zendesk does, what our competitors do is when you call, they create a ticket. And that's
Right.
when customer service starts for them. It doesn't matter how much data or technology you have if you're starting service at the wrong place. And
Right.
so I don't mean to get all passionate about it, but you've got to get something, because if not, then you're just a Me Too product. And no offense, Me Too products are great lifestyle businesses, but you're not selling to Meta for $1 billion, off we're just another chatbot. That
Right.
No, it's got to be something where people are like, oh yeah, wow, that isn't Zendesk. That's different.
Well, and it's nice to have something that you really feel like you can stand behind. What I think is really interesting on the approach you took is, I mean, what you just said there probably, I know resonated with me, probably resonates with a ton of
Yeah.
people, is we've all been treated as the ticket number,
Right.
and it's super frustrating. And then we've probably had those few wow moments with being a raving fan. Starts at that first interaction, and especially in the consumer world, you have a very short window to see if I'm going to recommend you as a product to
That's
my
right.
network and things like that. And in the B2B world, like all it takes is a couple bad experiences, and I might have a contract with you, but I will, I'll do everything I can to torpedo any of your deals in my network ask me about, because I'll share my experience. And I think you hit on a very emotional level, something everyone can relate to with that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it's one of those things where we all know messaging and positioning, and but there is something about spending some time on that and trying to find something that you feel like, and I like it's hard to come up with something unique and different, but I would challenge you to take the extra time and see if you can, because once you do, you'll know it. People will be like, oh, that's different. And like I said, it's not
Yeah.
the thing to grow your business by a cajillion, but it's a kernel, it's a foundation. And if you don't have it, like I said, it's fine. I just don't know if you're going to experience that. I've been lucky enough to experience two companies that have basically went from 5 to 100 in a couple of years. And I don't think you experience that unless you've got something like a kernel that's a little different than the Me Too's out there.
Well, and you got me thinking of another good friend. She ran marketing for an outdoor company, outdoor goods, not B2B software at all. And they were a premium product. And you walk into REI and there's a million backpacks and there's a million stoves and things like that, and theirs were expensive. And um, their differentiator was quality.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how do you measure quality?
Yeah.
And the tagline one of their influencers came up with, this guy's a polar explorer, and like quality matters, like your life is on the line. But his phrase that came up with was like, quality matters because life's too short for a wasted weekend. Like your gear doesn't work, and just like even when I say it now, I get like a chill. I'm like, darn straight. Like I don't want car trouble. I don't want anything to interrupt those weekends, because those things are precious.
It's cool.
And it's like finding those nuggets, which is not easy to do, especially in that work. In that, I like that phrasing, the sea of sameness, which I think we see a ton of just out and around
Well,
us.
now it's more than ever, right? I mean, and again, I'm speaking probably for more our industry, but everybody's tagline is like, we're the AI solution for sales or service or success.
Yeah.
And AI, and I'm just like, guys, everyone has access to every LLM. You can't be differentiated based on just AI. You've got to have, I don't know, there's something, and it brings me back to that, I maybe date myself, but I still love the old Simon Sinek golden circle, like,
Oh yeah.
people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you can't answer, and, I think in that he says, your why isn't just profits, it's something that drives you, it motivates you, it's that difference. And I think, man, if we as companies are going to say the what or the how, which that's where I think AI comes into play, like, yeah, we've got AI or we've got data, but your why it's got to be different. So I usually like to challenge people and be like, man, give me your why, because I'm an emotional buyer. I want to buy brands that have meaning, as well. I want to be moved, just like you said about the outdoor thing. Like I want to feel the chills a little bit when I'm buying SaaS technology. Come on, is that a crime? I mean, I want to do it.
I think that's a really good one. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit here because we've talked about, I think these are good, long lessons that apply, even regardless as technology changes. But you mentioned AI, you've mentioned kind of some of this messaging, positioning stuff. In today's world, as a, not even a marketing executive, but just as a marketer, like what does it mean to be a modern marketer, and what are the things that modern marketers need to be thinking about? And some of it, I think you hit on, is just that they're kind of lifelong lessons here. But what are the things that are really standing out to you?
Yeah, that's a big topic. I mean, I do think that the thing I've been thinking about the most is things are changing so fast that if you're not constantly trying to stay on top of those changes, you are going to fall behind. Again, probably sounds a little bit cliche, but I do believe books aren't going to be your answer. I'm finding that it is mostly networking. I mean, if you're not part of some form of group that allows you to talk to other people who are in the trenches, and I'm not just talking about, look, there's consultants who, and you can find it. There's consultants who know what they're doing. There's consultants who are just selling fluffy stuff. We see that a lot in customer service. The consultants who are going around and just make your customers happy. Look, there's people who kind of they get into the weeds, and I'm a big believer on LinkedIn. If I was going tactical, I'd say if you're not spending 30 minutes on LinkedIn a day as a marketer, chatting with people, looking at some of these posts, DMing people, interacting with them, building your network so that you can, like Jeff and I call each other every so often. It's like, hey, what are you thinking about the latest on ABM? Like, you've got to have these lifelines. And if
Yeah.
you don't, you're going to be going to, and I'm not saying you shouldn't try stuff on your own, because I think that's important, but you're going to go to books that I think are outdated in months. You're going to go to podcasts that are maybe, but if you can jump on and do that lifeline and talk to someone and be like, how do you build your financial planner? How do you allocate your marketing budget, dude? That makes a big difference. And so I think I'm finding more and more, I've been talking to some friends, and it's interesting to hear them say, like, Gabe, when it comes to like a G2 crowd, no offense to that, when it comes to reference or reputation sites, they're like, we don't even look at those to buy stuff anymore. We hit up our network. We talk to each other and figure stuff out. I mean, there's just these little inklings that are like, hey, what's your network? Because if your network's not there, I think you're going to. So that would be one point I've been really thinking about a lot lately.
I think to that end, like the G2s or the Gartner Magic Quadrants and those things, those are a justification for like others to not get fired, is what I feel like that one often shakes out to be, is just like, hey, other people said this was good, but like that's not the reason I bought.
Yeah.
What I did was I said, hey, hey, first off, community, I have this problem. Anybody have a solution or a recommendation? Those would be my first phone calls.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say, anybody have a bad experience, to your customer experience conversation. There is like, anybody have a bad experience, or anybody a raving fan of one of these? Like, I want just the honest, not marketing fluff truth of just kind of help me land that plane, and then I'm going to trust my community on that front. And maybe the last box I check is that, like, yeah, like they rate well,
I agree.
according to
Yeah,
third
look,
parties.
there's totally a place for these reputation sites, but if you've got a couple, and again, in that community, you'll find it, because you can certainly hit up a small group and you get 5 people that are small, but pretty soon you start talking with these people and you find that there's 2 or 3 that they jive with you and you understand it and they think like you, and it's where you get to a place where you can then reach out to them, these trusted peers who aren't going to give you the lip service. They're going to be like, I'm using XYZ tool and it's garbage. It's not,
Yeah.
that's not it. So anyways, I've found that you continue to evolve those relationships. It makes a big difference, but it starts small. It's like you start playing around on LinkedIn, you start networking a little bit, start engaging. Pretty soon you're finding guys like Jeff and you're like, oh, actually, he's maybe not the most handsome guy in the world, but he actually knows what he's talking about,
Yeah. Well, and it's I'll add a nugget of career advice, which is, and it's really hard to say because I think a lot of us struggle with it, which is, you've got to stay in touch with your network when you don't need them.
I know.
Because if you're only reaching out when you need them, people can feel that and they can sense that. And I've been guilty of it. I'll say that. And It's you kind of, when you look at it, it's
Oh,
like, oh, I actually have a large network and I need help with whatever. But if you're not just keeping, just a cadence, just a ping every once in a while, a check-in, and it takes time and effort, but that's just another, you gotta, I don't know, you kind of have to, there's a farming
I'm
term or
gonna
a
have to
gardening term here.
I'm gonna have to steal that one from you, man. That's a great one. That is so, yes, well said. Nothing to add
So
to.
I got into it when I was doing some journaling and stuff, just of like trying to send like one or two notes of gratitude every day, just through an email or something.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, just pinging old mentors and be like, "Hey, like, was thinking about you. I just want to say thanks for the impact you had. Like, hey, I've been reading about this thing. Here's your thoughts on it." Um, and that can be a great way. Now, again, it takes time, and I think a lot of us get too into our day-to-day jobs where it's easy to skip over. I don't need you. That sounds really bad. I don't need you right now, type thing. But I don't know. It's a hard, but I think important dynamic to remember.
I like it. I like it.
Anything else that's top of mind that you think modern marketers have to be thinking about today? Like that constant learning, that curiosity, and then learning through your network. Although I'll admit I'm also guilty at, I got April's pitch book here I need to read. So I read books, but at the same time, trying to stay up on all of them.
And look, there's nothing. I'm trying to make a point, but you're right. There's some classics out there. You should knock books too. Maybe one that I would say is, there is more important than ever is this. Is like the scientist mindset to marketing, and again, that may also sound like one of those obvious statements, but I find the people who can run true scientific experiments, where it's like, hey, can you fail fast? Can you set up an experiment to run a connected TV campaign and quickly find out if that's actually producing, and then make a decision whether to move up or out on it? It might sound like an obvious one, but man, there's some people I know, they get in there, they find an audience, they test a newsletter, it doesn't work, they find the next thing, they find that it's connected TV, that, oh, we're trying Facebook now. So Facebook didn't work, okay, we're trying here. They fail fast, they do it, but they have such an experimentation mindset. And we have the numbers, we have the data. I just don't know if everybody has the ability to like put together the hypothesis, the actual experiment, the results, and then basically the analysis. So that might be an obvious one, but boy, I think that's so important.
Yeah, no, I think that it's also, I'd be curious your thought on this. It's also not necessarily giving up right away. It's like you try it, and you don't just necessarily, and if it doesn't work, it might be a complete failure, and you're like,
Sure.
absolutely, we should abandon that. But also, I think there's a part around iteration. Like I was running a campaign, hyper tactical, like on LinkedIn. It's like if in your first week, like we got some leads, but
Yeah.
we learned a ton. We killed, we readjusted some of our big accounts that were eating a ton of our compression, our impressions away, and put them into a different, budget capped account. We saw what days of the week stuff was working on. We saw these messages and imagery were working, and like that was all in that first week. Had we just said like, hey, if we didn't hit our target threshold in week one, let's kill it because it was expensive, we would have never gotten to where we were, 3 weeks in, where now it's actually incredibly efficient and effective. And I think that's the other end, is like that knee-jerk reaction versus, actually being thoughtful as to how you experiment. Going through that too is a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. I appreciate. I think that is right. The iterative motion is something that you've got to just keep going on, because it isn't always just up or out. It's something that dive into it, see if you can iterate fast. I like that.
So what I'd be curious is you kind of, you talked some on your fun and passion around ABM, and you and I have talked a lot about this concept of signals.
Yep.
And how it's not just ABM. It's not just like, there's a lot of data points. And you've done a lot on this, and you had a phrase when we were catching up on, like, it's about listening more and acting a little bit less as you kind of go through that. What to you, because the ABM kind of a little bit of a bad word, maybe too much of a buzzword. Like, what is signals based marketing? How is it different than ABM? And where are you seeing success with that?
Yeah. Look, I think this is everything's. We just talked about iteration, and I just account based marketing never it always felt like the emperor with no clothes type of, that children's story. I just never knew what it was, like people are like, it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's so good. And as I grew up over the past 15 years of marketing, I was like, well, what is it? And people are like, ugh. I'm like, what? And they're like, ugh. Like you can, or it's targeting accounts. You're like, it's targeting. That's it. But it's buying 6 cents. It's a technology. Like I don't know. There were just moments where I'm like, this can't be it. And so everyone's got to learn on their own and figure out what works for them. And yeah, we have a little program, and I think you might hear more about whether you call it signals or something else, but signals-based marketing is a concept that has worked phenomenally well for us. And I think to me, it's a great addition to ABM. And fundamentally, you said it, it's more listening than it is acting. I think when we get into marketing, and it's not a problem, I just talked about it. We start trying every channel we can, and it's always just, should we direct response? Should we throw you a webinar? Should we get in your face in an event? And we're trying all these things because look, we got to hit numbers, but there's something about, almost quietness. Like, what if you could get your target audience in a room and just listen to them for a little bit? What would you learn? And
yeah,
and it is amazing, that concept. Like, what if you did that for 3 months and you could listen to every digital signal they were doing? Like, would you behave different in your marketing? And most people are like, well, Gabe, I obviously would, but I've never had means to actually listen very well. And I got to hit my numbers, so I got to run. So anyway, signal-based marketing is a listening mechanism that basically follows 4 fundamental concepts. And I think one of the things I don't like about different ABM tool sets is we've gotten into believing, and I'm not saying it's the end of the world, it's just crawl, walk, run, that when it comes to intent, we're really looking at like 2 main signals. One is third-party intent data, and that would be companies you're familiar with, like Bombora and people searching different items. Love it. I think that's great. And then people visiting your website. And it's like, those are 2 concepts. And we just said, I wonder if there's others. I wonder if, if again, you put your audience in a room, would they say the thing I do most is search on Forbes and go to customer.com, or would they say other things? And one of the things is we've actually found about 56 signals that our core audience does that are more predictive than those 2 signals I just mentioned, to lead them to want to become customers at Customer with the K. And again, I don't mean to make it too simple, but if you can listen and monitor the signals that are predictive for people to become a customer, why wouldn't you just keep listening and then acting on those signals more? Well, that's what we've done here. So that's the fundamental concept of this signals approach. And I don't know if it's revolutionary. It's just a nice iteration of ABM that for us has been game changing. Whereas when we were doing things like listening just to Bombora or website visits, it was okay. Don't get me wrong. We would listen to a website visit. We'd send it to the sales team, pray that they would follow up on it. Nobody ever did, or no BDR ever did. Look, it was okay, but I wouldn't call it like effective or game changing. So I don't really like a lot of ABM tools because I feel like they've left me hanging there. But we've developed a methodology that basically gathers our TAM, our ideal target list, through a variety of mechanisms, studying demographics, firmographics, etc. We then automatically pull in our ideal buyers. I mean, we know that from looking at past interactions and some of the stuff we're doing. That's be like our head of CX at an XYZ company. And now we've got this great customer data platform of our ideal audience. And then we just start attaching these 50 plus signals to it. And they're anything from, people buying. One signal that works really well from us is a technographic signal when someone buys Shopify. So when somebody buys Shopify, we can find that. That's a powerful one. When somebody puts a chatbot on their website of Zendesk, that's a great signal for it. When someone hits a certain threshold on Instagram followers, that's a really important one for it. Job change alerts. This is a classic one. We're going to hire customer service reps. Like You're kidding. You're telling me that's not more predictive than somebody like searching on the internet, something about customer experience? Like it is. It's more powerful. And we
Yeah.
see in our data. I can't say for your data. So anyways, we've lined up these then, 50 plus signals, and we're constantly listening and attaching them to our ICP. Then where we go from there is we just move into execution. We then have automated programs that basically reach out to these different target accounts and target contacts based on one or a series of signals, all automated. Because again, I don't think we need to like have thousands and thousands of BDRs. And we use email and direct mail, no phone calls, but LinkedIn, and those would be the majority of the we run it through that. Then we have a great reporting system to see which signals are working most appropriately to drive pipeline for the business. And so anyway, that would be at a high level. And I don't think that's rocket science, but I think if you went and interviewed people who work at ABM companies, what I just told you versus what ABM technology is, for example, it's not the same. Not even. In fact, I've challenged some of the ABM companies. I'm like, can you build this for me? And I think they want to go there. They're years from it. And I've had to duct tape and bale wire. If you saw the tech stack I use to do this, it's unfortunately I can't recommend one tool because nobody's out there. I'm actually trying to advise 3 companies right now to help me build it. But if someone else wants to jump in, let me know. I'd be happy. I'm not going to do it myself. But anyways, I'm probably blabbing too much. Comments on that?
No, I think that's what's interesting is it's kind of what the promise of ABM always was supposed to be. I think what the ABM platforms were probably constrained to was data they could get access to, but then also data sets that would scale, right? You're looking at very specific things, and Instagram followers is probably not a primary metric for a ton of people. And therefore, it's how do you find that, but then how do you figure those out? And I mean, from a scaling a product perspective, I can see how that would be tricky. One of my favorite companies got acquired way back in the day called Everstring, and they helped us build fit models when I was doing stuff, and they looked at like 20. Yeah, they looked at like 20,000 different attributes, and then you would ask the question, okay, like what were, like, you gave me a fit score, but like out of those, what were the nuggets? And it was like that was the closest I think I ever got to a scalable commercial like fit model type thing. But even they didn't necessarily have all of those triggers and those types of components there.
And I like that word, but that still is like finding. I don't know if any of us. It's one of the things I like to do in interviews when I interview revenue marketers is kind of see if I can grill them on like figuring out fit or ICP or your target audience, because I'll tell you, you can never go deep enough on figuring that out, like who should belong there and how are you, man? Do you have a living and breathing TAM list, and
right?
It's tough. That's tough stuff.
No, and then to systematize it is a whole nother level. You can have the approach, but the system is like, how do you make that then alive and dynamic is a whole nother. But I know some of the best RevOps people I know still struggle with it to this day. So it's no one solved it outright with an easy button yet.
We need one of those easy buttons, though.
Yeah. I know we're coming up on time, and as we wrap here, I've got 2 more questions for you. The first is, and I know you said you duct tape and baling wire your stack here, but most people have 2 or 3 core technologies that they must have in their sales and martech stack. I always love to hear, what are your top 3 that you've got to have?
Oh man, we did make a jump. We've tried a couple different email providers. So we've moved around from Marketo to HubSpot. I think we're doing HubSpot now. I feel like that's a pretty necessary, one for covering some of the basics. I've got the BDR group, so we've kind of stuck with, we played with the standard on outreach and sales off. We're now moved to Apollo. We've got those guys using kind of that technology. A lot of stuff you're probably not going to like the answer is homegrown and made. Our own scoring system, our own CDP, our own mechanism to track these 50 plus triggers.
Yeah.
We actually have an automated program that does use an email program. Anyway, so a lot of kind of homegrown stuff that we've tried to stitch together ourselves, but standard wise that you'd recognize, I've been pushing the team, like, I feel like nowadays, and I don't want to be mean to any vendors, but that statement, like the IBM, if you bought IBM in the past, you'd save your job or whatever. So, I mean, there's new technologies coming, and can we use, off brands that aren't the standard Marketos and stuff like that? But we have a couple of those lingering around. But I've been trying to do more stuff, trying to build my own stuff, man. Gotta do what you gotta do.
No, I get that. That's why a lot of companies do homegrown if they have the talent and resources to do it. Because then maintaining that can definitely
Oh, and
get a
it's
little
messy. It's
tricky
messy.
on
I'm,
that
I'm
side.
sure I've been I've
Yeah.
been burned multiple times now, but you know.
Last question for you here. If you had to give one piece of advice to either young marketers or yourself early in your career, what would it be? What's that thing that would really have even accelerated or catapulted you?
I think maybe fake it till you make it. That might be one statement I'd go with. It might be a little bit odd, but I say that I just think I go back to this LinkedIn thing. I know everyone's an influencer and everyone wants to be an influencer, and we got that influencer generation type thing going. But you just got to get out there and you start talking to people and you start commenting and you start putting your ideas down on paper. It sounds like you've done some journaling, Jeff. I mean, that word is again one of those, like, journaling. What is that? An old school type thing? But I'm telling you,
On
starting a new.
paper, not even in my iPad.
Yeah. No, but look, putting your thoughts down and forcing yourself to, like, put a coherent post on LinkedIn, or heaven forbids, some sort of a consistent blog where you summarize your learnings, and just being active. And I say fake it till you make it, but a little bit of an influencer, like, hey, I'm trying to learn marketing and here's what I've learned. And what have you learned? I feel like that expedited. It's the people who are hiding behind closed doors, trying to do it on their own, and so I'm just a big believer of, I know we're remote, a lot of us, but find a way to engage with others. Sometimes that means these social platforms, fake it a little bit, but just get out there and start doing it, because that's when you force yourself to put it in down. And, oh, that didn't make as much sense as I thought it did. Or you learn from John Doe, who said, hey, I didn't like that. And pretty soon you've just advanced yourself 2 steps by putting yourself out there and trying to be something maybe you're not.
I love it. One piece I like to recommend to students early on is, like, a lot of people hate speaking. They don't want to speak at conferences or anything like that. And so very often companies will be desperate to have someone be willing to speak. I'm like, raise your hand. Even if you're super uncomfortable, people assume you're an expert if you're up on stage. Right. And so, like, just take advantage of all the speaking opportunities that you can possibly get, because it's kind of that faking it till you make it. And definitely helps a lot there. But I like that. I mean, it relates back to networking, a lot of what we chatted about. But I know you've got a busy schedule and a full day ahead of you. Thank you so much for being on today. We might have to go deeper into the other metrics on what to do and what not to do on scaling in a future episode. But thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, it's a blast, man. It's always fun catching up, and yeah, I owe you one for all the free consulting I've been saying we've been using Jeff for. So anytime I can help, I'm a fan, man. Let me know.
All right. Well, then we'll till our next time. Cheers. Have a good one. And thanks everybody until you catch the next show. Thanks so
Appreciate it.
much.